Our next guest is known for his crusade against higher taxes. Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform, believes that shrinking the size of government is key to reviving the economy. He's the co-author of a new book, Debacle: Obama's War on Jobs and Growth, and he joins us now from Washington. Grover, you have held your stance that tax cuts are the way out of our economic problems. What allowances are you making for the deterioration in consumer and corporate confidence because of external factors like Europe or China?
Well, I think one of the biggest threats to the American economy and why the economy is doing poorly now and more poorly than even some had hoped was that on January 1st of next year, not 6 months from now, there's a $500 billion tax increase that hits automatically as the alternative minimum tax patch lapses, and 30 million American families will be hit by the alternative minimum tax, as well as all marginal tax rates increase. The per-child tax credit goes from $500 to $1,000. Expensing disappears. The American economy looks at that and says, if Obama gets reelected, $500 billion tax increase coming straight at us. Of course, investors are going to be very concerned about what happens. This won't be cleared up until after the November election.
You're referring to the fiscal cliff and perhaps markets discounting that already.
Well, there are two paths. If Romney and a Republican House and Senate get elected, all the temporary tax reductions get for one full year, and then they'll do tax reform, as Paul Ryan's budget proposes, taking a top-rate corporate and individual to 25. If Obama gets elected, he can veto any change, and we already know that if he wanted to make any of those tax reductions permanent, like the AMT patch or expensing or lower rates, he could have done that any time in the last 3 years. He chose not to, so we have to assume he wants most, if not all, of those tax hikes to take effect, or he would have fixed them in 2009 or 10, chose not to.
Grover, I want to bring up a comment that was made by Jeb Bush last week. He told a House Budget Committee that he would support $1 of tax increase for every $10 in spending cuts. Now, Bush, we know, is not running for office, but a lot of people are reading his comments as a sign that the Republican stance on taxes has gone too far. What do you say?
Well, it's just the opposite. You're quite right. He hasn't run for office in 10 years. He doesn't know Washington, D.C. He hasn't followed the budget fights here. The Republicans understand, and this is Mr. Boehner, the Speaker of the House, reiterated his commitment to the pledge not to raise taxes. Mitch McConnell, you have almost all the Republicans in the House and Senate have made a commitment in writing to the American people that when they fight for less government, they're not going to raise taxes. They are going to bring down spending. All of the Republican presidential candidates except one, 9 out of the 10, took the pledge to the American people, not to ATR or me, but to the American people. And, of course, the one fell apart early. Mitt Romney is the nominee. The modern Republican Party will not raise your taxes, and it won't be suckered into the kind of deal that destroyed Jeb Bush's dad's career. Remember, he was promised many dollars of spending cuts if for $1 of tax increase. The bill he signed led to only tax increases, no spending restrictions. They lied to Reagan in '82 and to Bush in '90. So no American politician in Washington, D.C. watching this would ever walk down that alley again.
Grover, let's talk about someone who is in office then. The Republican Richard Tisay says that closing loopholes and ending unnecessary deductions or credits or subsidies should be explored without conditions. And Barbara Anderson, who's with Citizens for Limited Taxation, which is affiliated with your group, says that she agrees with Tisay. If there's a chance to simplify the tax code and cut subsidies, especially if the revenue goes directly towards paying down the deficit, you take that. And she says she believes that you might be rethinking this. Are you?
No. Of course, Barbara's from Massachusetts, and there the Taxpayer Protection Pledge has been very helpful for state legislative candidates. Tisay, who's a state representative, who's running for Congress now. I had a chance to talk to him the other day. He's committed to reducing spending, not raising taxes. Politicians can often get caught up in a hypothetical. Imagine a world where we'd eliminated all wasteful government spending. Imagine a world where a tax increase would reduce the deficit, except there is no world like that. The world we live in has President Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi in it, and every time they raise $1 in taxes, they spend it and more. So I understand that politicians can get wrapped around the axle answering a hypothetical, but the good news for taxpayers is that more candidates are making the commitment to voters not to raise taxes. The pledge is stronger than it was a year ago, stronger than 2 years ago, much stronger than back when Bush broke the pledge in 1990 and lost his presidency because of that. We've learned from Bush's failure in that case.
Thank you so much, Grover Norquist, joining us this morning. He's